Summer class!
NANI?お前、これは。
Hey guys, welcome again to the video. So today we will be discussing about the part 2 of the handout in your handout in professional conduct and ethical standards. So in here, part 2 we will be discussing definition of ethics, kung saan nanggaling ang ethics, origin and nature, kung bakit kaya ini-study natin ang ethics, assumption of ethics, ano kaya yun, assumption, object, two general forms of acts, components of moral acts, forms of ethical analysis, forms of ethics, major ethical system, yan yung marami. So, yung overview niya or yung three main categories is normative, meta, and applied ethics. And under normative, hanggang utilitarianism tayo. Okay? So, yun. Hello guys. So, part 2 of ethics. So, ano kaya ang ethics? So, ethics come from the Greek word ethos, which means character. In Greece, it is concerned with the development of virtues and moral character. So, somewhat connected siya sa subject niyo ng first year kayo na character formation. 1. So, actually, nanggaling yan sa one of the earliest civilization in the world in Greece. So, sa yung mga philosophers or yung mga great thinkers dun, tulad ni Socrates and Plato. So, if you research on the internet, maraming definition ng ethics. Marami siyang definition. Pero, yung kukunin nating definition is yung nakalagay sa handout nyo. I-highlight ko dito. So, study of methods and principles used to distinguish good and bad from bad, right from wrong action, and etc. etc. So, it means that in the study of ethics, there are what we call yung mga ethical system. So, ito siya. Normative, meta, and applied. And under normative, meron yung 10. Ito. Utilitarianism hanggang sa moral relativism. So, by that system, iba-iba yung interpretation niya ng good from bad. So, take for example, utilitarianism. So, the basis for good in judging an action, either kung good siya or bad, it is happiness. So if it makes the people happy, then it is good. If it does not make them happy, and it is bad. So utilitarianism, that is for utilitarianism. So iba-iba yung interpretation ng mga ethical system kung ano ang good or bad. Meron na naman yung ito sa forms of ethical analysis, yung legalistic morality, wherein ito siya, wherein yung basis ng good or bad is from the law, from the law they made. So kapag bawal, edi bad siya. Pag okay, hindi ka maaresto, and good siya. So that is for the definition of ethics. So origin and nature of ethics. So ethics, the study of good or bad, came from one of the earliest civilization in the world in Greece. So mainly from Socrates, and he invented the term, or we invented the term for him, the Socratic method. Socratic method in short is the process of questioning and questioning, or questioning, open-ended question, yung hindi lang yes or no, yung palaging kine-question mo kung ano, why, how, paano yun, why, parang ganun. So, for example, what is justice? So, from that thought, i-question mo yung sarili mo. Tapos mag-answer ka syempre, di ba? And then, either i-present mo yung question sa another man, woman, and he will cross-examine it and sasabihin, what is the opposite of justice? Is justice only for the majority? What is the level of, what are the levels of justice? Basta, kung ano yung i-question mo until you come up with a decent description of what is justice. So, it encourage critical thinking. Ano pa yung nakalagay dito? Sa definition ng thoughtco.com, the principle underlying the Socratic method is that the student learned through the use of critical thinking, reasoning, and logic. This technique involves finding holes in the in their own theories, then patching them up. So from yung parang research din lang na gagawa ka ng question muna, mga problem set, and gagawa ka ng hypothesis mo, and then itetest mo siya through cross-examination with other people until such na makakreate kayo ng decent or appropriate na description for a thing. So that is Socratic method. So ayun, doon nanggaling ang study of ethics. Why do we study ethics? So according to your handout, meron dito, there are 4 general reasons why we need to study ethics. Ethics makes clear to use why one act is better than the other. So through studying kung ano yung pinaka morally, di ba, study ng good or bad yung ethics, kung i-study mo yung isang action, and through the Socratic method, you analyze it, reanalyze, then if that act is better than act, ano yung i-choose mo? Yung better act, di ba? Di ba? So, for example, magpapasorry ka. So anong gagawin mo? So nag-iisip ka, paano kaya magpasorry sa isang tao? So inisip mong i-text mo na lang, pero merong katagang action is speaks louder than words. So nagbigay ka ng gift. So which act is better than the other? Yung magbibigay ng gift para parang sincere, di ba? Or hindi mo na lang sa text ka magpapasorry, through personal. So yun, one act is through the study of ethics, or through ethics, I mean, is you could judge which act is better to use than the other. Another is ethics contributes an orderly social life by providing humanity some basis for agreement, understanding some principles or rules of procedure. So dito is through the study of ethics, pwede kang makagawa ng do's or don'ts ng mga tao. Ano kaya yun? Mga laws. So meron tayong tinatawag na yun nga, yung legalistic morality, or yung sa authoritarian ethics, yung legalism or legalistic morality, wherein the basis for good or bad is from the law. And sa law naman is craft natin ko para makontrol yung actions ng mga tao, para yung mga bad people na gumagawa ng certain actions ng crime tulad ng rape is ma-isolate sila, makakasuhan, may imprison, para hindi sila gumawa ng chaos sa society, di ba? So through ethics nagawa yung authoritarian ethics, and sa authoritarian ethics meron yung legalism. Through that meron yung do's or don'ts natin, and yun, parang through that sinaset niya yung boundaries kung ano dapat yung gawin, yung tama at yung krimen, di ba? So I hope you understand that. Moral conduct, another reason. Moral conduct and ethical systems, both of the past and present, must be intelligently appraised and criticized. So yun. So through the study through ethics is we have different interpretation of good or bad. So we will choose what is appropriate. So ano kayang through enforcing the law, which is the most appropriate ethical system to be used on that kind of situation. So for example, there was parang a violent protest, and nag-iisa na-corner ka na isang riot police sa isang corner, at you are surrounded by violent protester, and hinuli mo yung isa na tao. Anong gagawin mo? What type of ethical system will you use? Will you use yung legalism, yung authoritarian ethics, or yung social contract theory? Hindi. To save your life, you use utilitarianism. Make the people happy. You free the man whom you arrested so that you will not die. Because if you do that, it will enrage the people to do violent protests, di ba? So that is only an example for that. Another reason for study of ethics is ethics seeks to point out to men the true values of life. So of course, through the constant study of good or bad, men will realize, or women, of course, humans will realize kung ano, what is good, and through the knowledge of knowing what is good, maybe their behavior will change. So yun. Okay, let's now go to the assumption of ethics. assumption is, sabi dito, fundamental beliefs or statements that are accepted to be true without burden of proving or kailangan ng proof. So, these two assumption is needed to judge an act to be morally good or not. These two are needed to judge an act. These two must be present so that an act may be considered good or bad. So, first one, man is a rational being. So, man is capable of distinguishing what is good or bad. Alam niya ang tama at mali. Dapat. Second, man must be free. So, at that moment, man must be free. So, what do you mean by free? Walang external force na humahad lang sa ginagawa niya. Internal lang. So, internal, yung parang sa sarili niya mismo lang. So, these two are needed so that you can judge an act to be good or not. So, the same is true with, actually, yung criminal procedure. So, the judge will consider all circumstances in order for him to judge the person if he committed a crime or not. So, let's tackle yung first. So, man is a rational being. If he's not rational at the time of the crime, then he can be exempted from the crime that he committed. So, for example, he killed his brother or sibling, pero he has insanity. So, one example of exempting circumstances is number one, insanity and imbecile. If it is proven that he's insane or an imbecile, he may be exempted from the crime because he is not rational. He is not rational at that time. Another is, sa second assumption is, man is free. Another accepting circumstances ng criminal law natin is yung number 5. Any person who acts under the compulsion of an irresistible force are exempted. So, if you are not free, or your freedom or your free will is under duress ng isang irresistible force, then that act is not yours, or the crime committed is parang hindi ikaw yung gumawa kasi hindi naman parang may kumontrol sa freedom mo that time. So, yan. Objects of ethics. So, there are two objects of ethics. And number one is the physical object, and number two, as you can see here, non-physical object. So, physical object is the doer of an act. Non-physical, the action done by a moral agent. So, saan tayo sa ethics? Ano yung ginajudge niya? Hindi yung non-physical objects. At as you can see, as you can read here, the non-physical object is the formal object of ethics. It is where the ethics, the study of good or bad, is focused upon. Ito yung ini-study nila. Ito yung formal na ini-study ng ethics. So, in the study of ethics, there are two general forms of acts. One is acts of man and human acts. So, sa acts of man, may non-moral acts. These are involuntary natural acts and the voluntary natural acts. So, involuntary natural acts, ito yung involuntary movement sa science nyo. Beating of the heart, blinking of the eye, or mga reflexes ninyo. So, those are involuntary natural acts. Voluntary natural acts is acts that doesn't really, walang involvement kung good or bad siya. So, one is sleeping, di ba? Is it good, or is sleeping good or bad? Or parang in the act of sleeping, is it good or bad, di ba? No, na you cannot judge it because it doesn't involve a degree of freedom or voluntariness. Sabi dito, brushing of teeth, you cannot really judge kung good or bad siya, or walang degree of freedom and voluntariness, di ba? So, parang normal lang siyang act. At meron ditong nilagay ko na amoral act. So, amoral act is it differs from the non-moral. Pero, siya is amoral acts are acts that sabi dito is having or showing no concern about whether the behavior is morally right or wrong. So, kung wala kang pakialam, indifferent ka, wala kang pakialam kung anong kahihinat ng iyong ginagawa, then you can be considered amoral. One example lang yan. Another example is an infant na bigla kang sinapak, pero di ba an infant isn't can't doesn't have the capacity to distinguish from good or bad, di ba? So ayun, hindi niya alam kung good or bad yun, pero ginawa niya. Ginano niya yung mukha mo, di ba? So that is amoral. Either hindi niya alam what is good or bad, or wala siyang pake. So yun. Pakibasa na lang itong mga examples kung hindi niya pa naiintindihan. Sorry. Another is human acts. It includes that are conscious, deliberate, intentional, voluntary, and are within the preview of human value judgment. So, dito, yung parang, specifically, ito yung formal object ng ethics. It is where the point of judging kung tama ba or mali. So, dito, merong moral ethical acts that observe or conform to a standard of normality, helping others in need, taking examinations honestly. And second is immoral or unethical acts. It deviates from their interpretation kung ano ang good. So kung bad siya in a society, then it is considered immoral or unethical. So examples: refusing to help others, cheating in exam, intentional crimes, etc. So yun lang. So let's now go to the components of a moral act. So we have said earlier that the non-physical object or yung action done by the moral agent is the formal object. Dito binabase kung good or bad ba siya. So meron siyang component. So it has three component: may intent, may means, may end. Ito yung pag-iisip, paggawa, at yung kahinahinatnan ng gawa mo. So depending upon the ethical system that you will use, these three can be broken down into three, and both are independent in knowing what is good. Okay, so for example, you intended to embarrass your friend in front of his crush. So you send a love letter with the sign of your friend's name. So you gave it to the girl, but at the end he was not embarrassed, and it turns out that it turns out that the letter became the bridge for their love. Naging boyfriend girlfriend sila. So they were happy. So kahit yung intention mo is bad, as long as the result is good, then as long as the result is happiness, then the moral act you did, even though it is intended to be bad, to embarrass your friend, pero good naman yung kinalabasan, edi good yung moral act na yun. According to utilitarianism, there are other ethical system tulad ng categorical imperative ni Immanuel Kant, wherein the intention must be pure. Na even though the end of the act is something bad happen, then as long as the intention is good, then it's still a moral act. For example, may magpapakain kayo sa liblib na lugar. So, may food drive kayo or magpapakain kayo sa mga liblib. Pero at the end of the day, nagkasakit lahat ng mga tao dahil pala napanis yung kinain nila. So, even though ganun yung end na act, is as long as the intention is good, then it's somewhat moral. So, yun lang. Pala yung components ng moral act. Hello. So, punta tayo sa forms of ethical analysis. Forms of ethical analysis is simply the judgment or the form of judgment being judgment to an act, whether it is good or bad. Maaaring ito is ethical system. So, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, nilagay ko lang as an introduction to the ethical system. So, number 1 and 2, descriptive ethics. Descriptive ethics talks about the collective judgment of the people. So, what if one society judge an act as good? For example, they practice concubinage, then it is good. Nandito yung question, what do people think is right? So, ano yung belief ng tao sa good or bad as a society. Sa normative ethics naman is it's more than that. It's more than what what the people think is right. So, kapag inisip nila concubinage, kahit kapag descriptive ethics good yun, for example, pag isipin talaga nila, isipin ng maigi, they should not, it is not a moral act because the effects of concubinage is somewhat immoral, di ba? So, it's more than what the people think is right. Ito yung dapat nilang gawin. So, gets niyo ba? How should people act? Yun. So, for example, there are 8 societies. One society practices concubinage, but the 7 doesn't because they believe that it is parang in their conscience bawal talaga, kaya hindi illegal ang concubinage. Pero sa society isa, pinapractice nila yung concubinage because they think it parang it's their collective belief as a society. So, ganun. But if we talk about descriptive ethics or comparative ethics, it's what the people think is right. If normative ethics naman, how should people act? It's more than what people think is right. Parang, hindi lang yung belief ng tao. It goes beyond that. Okay? So, under normative ethics, mayroong consequentialist, mayroong non-consequentialist. Ito. Non-consequentialist and non-consequentialist. So, sa consequentialist, so, tinake niya yung example ng utilitarianism. The basis for the judgment of good is in the end of an act. Basis ng judgment ng good is the end of an act. So, whether your intention is bad or your means is bad, as long as the end of the act is good or it produces happiness for the utilitarianism, then it is good. And that's what consequentialist ethics mean. So, from the word consequence, parang end of action, di ba? Non-consequentialist naman. So, for example nga, yung categorical imperative, whether the means or the ends is bad, but the intention is good, then still a good moral act. So, yung hinihit na niya, ginajudge niya sa components ng act is the intention. Gets niya ba? So, okay. Punta tayo sa authoritarian ethics. Authoritarian ethics is their basis for good or bad or from their judgment is from a higher power or a higher document, be it from a god or from, for example, constitution. So, meron dito. Under it is theological ethics. So, Christians, Muslims have this one, theological ethics, which means that the basis for what is good or bad depends upon their God or their Allah. So, sa Bible natin binabase yung good or bad natin, di ba? And Bible is written by God or sa Quran. Gets ba? So, it's from God. So, whether God say that is good or whether God say that is bad, then it's what the theological ethics follow from a higher power. Another is legalism or legalistic morality. So, actually, pinapractice yan ng every society here in Earth. So, mga nations, mga countries, meron silang constitution. And from that constitution, yun yung pinaka-basis nila for good or bad. So, if the constitution says that this act is bad, if the constitution says that this act is good, then that is legalism or legalistic morality. So, punta tayo sa ethical egoism. Ethical egoism's basis for good or bad is yung tao mismo. If that person, if what he's doing is if the result of what he's doing is good for him, then it is good according to him. If his action results into bad action, bad parang harm to him, then that is bad. For example, Mr. Kyler Pundaw is cheating. He said that it is good because he benefits from cheating. So, ganun yun. It's mostly, sabi, selfish. It is a very selfish thing. So, sabi dito, for some moral philosophers, for an ethical egoist, I mean is, for example, si Kyler Pundaw, sabi niya is, wala rin lang yung ethics na yan. Bakit ba? Yaman ka ba sa ethics? You know? Yaman ka ba sa ethics? Sabi niya pa, nagpapapogi ba ang ethics? Hindi naman. Di ba? Yung mga girls ngayon, parang pinipili daw yung mga bad boy, yung walang ethics. So, ayun, why bother? Daw. Why bother? So, ganun ang ethical egoism. Okay, lastly, situational ethics. Situational ethics, sabi dito, from the word situation, the basis for good or bad is the situation itself. So, for example, may tatay ka. Yung tatay mo, nagtago sa bahay mo kasi may ginawang krimen. Hinahanap siya ng hinahanap siya ng mga polis. So, sabi mo, pumunta siya sa bahay, yung mga polis pumunta sa bahay niyo. Sabi mo, wala po si tatay dito. Kaya, magsinungaling ka. So, from that situation, yung sinabi mo is good. Kasi, tatay mo, tapos hinahanap pa siya ng police. Pero, some other ethical system, tulad ng categorical imperative, na Immanuel Kant, bawal yan kasi lying is bad, di ba? Liars go to hell. Pero, sa situational ethics, it depends upon the situation. Okay? Hello, so, punta tayo sa forms of ethics. There are three. One is practical, theoretical, moral skepticism. I will not go further to this because it's more hindi siya practical sa subject natin. So, practical ethics answers mostly yung mga day-to-day situation natin. For example, yung nakalagay dito. So, sa law enforcement, tama ba yung for example, tama ba or ethical ba ang maximum tolerance, ganun? Practical. Yung alam niyo naman yung meaning ng practical, di ba? Theoretical ethics more on deals with, yun nga, more on the concepts ng morality. Hindi siya it's hard to explain this one, but it's more on according to this one, the study of meaning of ethical concepts such as good, right, fairness, etc. It attempts to study the nature of moral acts, inquires what makes right action, right determines between. So it's a higher thinking than yung practical ethics na it talks about yung mga different principles. For example, yung mga laws tulad ng sa theoretical ethics is talks about yung more on the vague, yung medyo nangatong concepts. So sabi dito, question, what does it mean when one says something right or good, or why should I be moral? So it's what is parang is maximum tolerance really good thing to do or something like that. Basta if you talk about theoretical ethics, it's more on the judgment of the moral principles that is involved within within the series of acts. It's more higher than practical. Sa moral skepticism is ina-avoid niyang it avoids yung pag sinabing ito yung hindi nako-convince na pag sinabing good yan, i-question niya pa kung bakit yan good. So that is moral skepticism. It doesn't really hindi siya nagsasettle ng answer kung what is good or bad. So yun, ngayon pakibasa na lang yung personal and social ethics. Dito nagtatapos ang part 2. Pero in the next video, I will talk about utilitarianism and these three over here. So yun lang guys, bye! Thank you for listening.